Hello, my name is Bud Blake. I'm Thurston County Commissioner, and I am the chair of the Board of County Commissioners this year and the chair of the Behavioral Health Organization. And today I wanted to talk about a subject that's very near and dear to my heart, and especially for the county-wide. As we know, there is a growing population. People come and go, but there is a growing population here in Thurston County, and we'll talk about Mason County too and its population. But for Thurston County, there's approximately 260 to 280,000 people, give or take a few thousand. With that in mind, with that increase in people, you have to have systems of systems, either from a government side, nonprofit, or profit side. But from a government side, we look at it in terms of being able to handle those who need a place to go to get mental assistance. And we have here in Thurston County one of the best. And so I'll talk about a couple programs with some of the experts as we go along with this in terms of the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, the Triage Center here in Thurston County, and Triage Center in Mason County. And I'm so fortunate to have this forum to be able to discuss that, because it's something that helps not only for the general public, but for law enforcement as well. As I mentioned, I am the chair of the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization. And so with that in mind, there's two other commissioners that sit on the board. Another one is from Thurston County, and the other one is from Mason County. I say that because we have excellent staff of people who handle those who have mental health issues and substance abuse issues. But in that also we have a system, what we call the triage, and we have one here in Thurston County, and we're building one in Mason County. And that is absolutely wonderful because it helps. For example, a scenario would be if a person is caught tagging and the law enforcement is called to the scene and a behavioralist is called to the scene, we can then do things differently than, say, take them to the big jail and hold them overnight and use that as a place to do treatment and what have you. So we have the triage here in Thurston County, and with that comes the law enforcement, law and justice component of that. And I have Mr. Wayne Graham here. He's going to talk about a little bit how that works within the Triage Center here, and particularly the acronym LEAD, L-E-A-D, which is Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion. And so Wayne, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about the LEAD program and how you got involved.
Great, Commissioner, I appreciate it. My name's Wayne Graham. I'm with the Thurston County Prosecutor's Office. I'm a senior deputy there. I've been with the office since 2000. And recently John Thunheim had asked if I'd become part of the LEAD program to try and see how we could get it further along than maybe where it was. It's always difficult when you start initiating new programs, but the Triage Center is a resource that I know law enforcement was very interested in utilizing. And so it was an opportunity to hopefully engage law enforcement, educate law enforcement for another really tool in their tool belt. So instead of just like you had mentioned, if there's a criminal act, the normal process for law enforcement would just be to arrest and book, and then they're in jail, and away we go. And so the Triage Center allowed law enforcement a specific place instead of the jail to take some folks. And so you indicated a tagging incident. Oftentimes they don't even have to necessarily be in essence committing a crime. They could just be in crisis. Mm-hmm. And of course, law enforcement is the initial responders oftentimes. Mm-hmm. And so it not only is a civil opportunity, but a criminal one as well. And one that I know our office supports because, as you indicated, the mentally ill need a little different approach sometimes.
Exactly, it's a good approach, yes.
And there are some, unfortunately, the jail is that net at the bottom of the silo, so to speak. The jail has to catch everybody. Mm-hmm. And I think what I know our office and law enforcement appreciates is, let's see if there's an opportunity before they get down to the net to keep them from getting there in the first place.
You bet.
And so that's really what the program, we got our insight up in Seattle and brought it down to Olympia or Thurston County. Mm-hmm. And as you know, Commissioner, better than anyone, the dynamics in downtown Olympia are very different than they are in rural Thurston County. Mm-hmm. Law enforcement's response to those types of behaviors are very different. But the Triage Center is nice because it serves the whole county. It doesn't just serve the urban areas, and so the rural areas can take advantage of it as well.
You bet. So you mentioned a number of things in there, and so let's just kind of go back and pull some of it apart to be able to, for the viewing audience to understand. Law enforcement on the scene, can you walk us through kind of a step-by-step and how they come to the Triage Center and your role as far as the justice of that?
Sure. Mm-hmm. So law enforcement is obviously most oftentimes a proactive response agency. Someone calls for some assistance, whether for themselves or for somebody that they see in crisis. So they'll arrive at the scene, and they've received some special training in regards to hopefully being able to assess, is this a criminal behavior act, or is this maybe a mental health driven behavior act? And so obviously there's some discretion there. And if they're able to collect the information at the scene, they're able to contact either our mobile outreach unit, which is nice through telecare and having them come out and assess and provide some services, or directly bringing them right here to the triage facility versus right next door to the jail.
To the bigger jail.
And so it's an opportunity to prevent them from having to go through the booking process, but still receive some services and frankly, still get them to a safe place. That's, I think, law enforcement's main focus there, is to get them where they're safe, and then obviously the community's safe as well.
Okay, so in theory, we have the person here at the Triage Center where we're sitting here. What is your role, or the law and justice role, as far as being an integral part in the even assessing the restitution, or the restitution, and how the whole court system works for us? Walk us through that.
And that's where we've developed kind of a new unit in our office, and I know we'll be talking about it a little later, called First Look. So basically, any new arrest or new law enforcement contact that rises to a felony level will come across my desk. And so what we're hoping is, if somebody is a lead referral to triage, that there's a law enforcement tick. So in essence, I get that case right up front. And then I can assess whether or not justice, so to speak, I guess, is served by engaging the criminal system, or saying, you know what, as long as this person has gotten engaged with some mental health services, maybe that was our goal in the criminal system anyway. And so maybe we kind of come off of the gas pedal, so to speak, if they're able to engage with those mental health services. Maybe there's really nothing to gain by our office filing charges and going down the normal criminal process. So it's an opportunity, hopefully, to still get some positive outcomes, but without engaging the criminal justice system.
So, so when you say engaging the criminal justice system, the larger criminal justice system.
Exactly.
Right. So there's kind of a miniature one here at the Triage Center. Is that a fair assessment in terms of prosecuting attorney, public defense, court commissioner, and whatever law enforcement's role in?
Right. I should have made that clear. When I say engage the criminal process, I usually involve a judge.
Right.
And so what's nice is exactly what you said, and I know you'll be talking with Patrick a little bit later. There's more of a collaboration between the criminal partners, so to speak, with the prosecutor's office, the mental health providers, and the defense counsel. And so there is an opportunity to engage, I guess, in the system, but not have the formal process, or like you referenced, the big criminal justice process.
Sure. And so we've been doing this, we as a whole have been doing this, and so from a prosecuting attorney's standpoint, has it been beneficial to have this branch now, a new branch, if you will, from the Prosecuting Thunheim's perspective?
You know, as anybody who knows John or Mr. Thunheim, he is always looking for new avenues or new opportunities to effectuate justice while always balancing community safety, and that kind of ties in with my earlier answer. If somebody is here and they're safe, then the community is safe as well. So it's a new tool for us in seeking more of a restorative or a rehabilitative component to criminal justice that I think is a great opportunity, especially like we talked about, Commissioner, when you're talking about mentally ill folks. The old traditional system might not be the best way to go at modifying their behavior. Sometimes it might be, but the Triage Center and what everyone does here allows us another opportunity to hopefully get someone healthy, short of having to go through that traditional system.
You bet. So within the whole system of the Triage Center and the roles that you play, tell me and the public a little bit about First Look.
And I appreciate that, Commissioner, because it's a new program in the prosecutor's office where it really ties in with the ideology behind the triage program.
Oh, great.
Is there a different way of approaching criminal behavior than what we've always done in the past, which is kind of just, can I prove the case? Let's make an offer. If they don't like it, we can go to trial and then go to jail or prison. Okay. And there are times where that's appropriate for a particular offender, but let's make sure that we're using that system for the correct offenders. One of the adages I think of First Look is, you know, there are some people that belong in jail, and that's just the nature of our society. But let's make sure the right people are in jail, and let's make sure they're there for the time that they should be. Sure. Let's not have them there longer than they should be, and let's make sure that our jail population is really designed to effectuate community safety. And so First Look is giving us a chance to look at every new case that comes into the office and say, is there a different approach here? Is there a different way of looking at this case than we
Right.
traditionally have. We focus on low risk, low offense offenders, so kind of lower level felonies and people maybe not with a ton of criminal history. Maybe there's an opportunity to effectuate some change in their behavior. Or, frankly, the high risk low offense offenders.
There are
People who have a
those.
lot of history, but maybe are more substance abuse or mental illness abuse where they're maybe self-medicating with drugs.
Sure.
And so there's an opportunity with the collaboration of the Public Defender's Office of saying, okay, are we arguing about the crime? And that's really the focus. No, there's really no issue in regards to whether they committed the crime. It's what do we do with them now?
Right.
And I think oftentimes in the past, the consequence of admitting to the crime was so severe, people would say, oh, I might as well roll the dice and go to trial. I've got no incentive to negotiate. So what we've tried to do is say, look, if you're willing to own the behavior, then let's work at a solution to make sure you don't come back.
It's practical and reasonable and solution bound.
Absolutely. It doesn't have, it has less to do with the amount of the consequence versus what the consequence is.
Right.
And so if we're tying in an opportunity for either mental health or substance abuse treatment or anger management treatment, domestic violence treatment, we want to try and remove the hurdles that are preventing that person from being successful. Right. And so it's identifying that through our office and frankly through the prosecutor's office or through the public defender's office, through pretrial services, through all of the agencies that kind of touch somebody as they come through the criminal justice system. Getting as much information as we can so we can kind of formulate a resolution that always protects community safety and holds the offender accountable, but also encourages them or gives them the tools that they need to be successful going forward so we don't have to see them again.
Sounds like a great tool to have in the toolbox, reducing time and money and then increasing the person's success rate as far as coming to the system.
That's the goal.
And of course, there's the last question, the cost. The cost, not only dollars, but tell me how large your staff is, and not just you, but how it's all tied back into the prosecuting attorney's office.
Well, like I said, it's just interesting because what we're trying to do is keep us out of that particular component. So at this point, it's primarily myself, as long as we don't file charges, and some staff people that help me assist in just compiling numbers and things. There's a lot of non-traditional criminal justice partners involved. I know you're going to be talking with Mr. Friedman a little bit later, and for somebody to say that the prosecutor's office and the BHO are sitting at the same table is kind of an interesting concept for folks.
Yeah.
But as we go forward, I think it's a necessary collaboration. And I know Patrick will be talking a little bit later in regards to some of the roles that are engaging in the prosecutor's office and the defense attorney's office that were maybe not what they would have been, say, 5 or 10 years ago. They would have been more adversarial, and there's always a time where that's going to happen.
Sure, it's probably,
but let's save the fighting when it needs to be. Let's see if we can work together in maybe getting a positive outcome for both the community and the offender, especially if they're suffering from some mental illness. There might be a real different way of going at that. So our expenditures at this point are really kind of personnel. I know that Mr. Friedman will talk a lot more about as far as the expenditures here at Triage.
Yeah. I want to take the moment here to thank you and the prosecuting attorney, all the others that are behind you. What you do is for assisting those who need help with the mental health, the Triage Center. Thank you so much for coming today and explaining to the public and what we do here. It's been beneficial and greatly appreciated.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner, appreciate it.
Bet. And our discussion on the Triage Center here in Thurston County and potentially in Mason County. Here in Thurston County, we have one of the critical components of the law and justice system. It's the pretrial services. And I have with me here Kelly McIntosh from the Thurston County Pretrial Services. Hello, Kelly. How you doing?
Hi. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about how big the section is and the role that you play and the role that the team plays as a whole in terms of the law and justice system.
Sure. Well, Pretrial Services has been a part of the Thurston County criminal justice system for more than 25 years now, probably coming up on 27 years. And we recently became our own department separate from the courts, so that's pretty exciting.
It
gives
very
us
exciting,
some new opportunities. We have a new director, Marianne Clear, who has been with us about a year and a half now, and we are a total of 5 individuals now in that department. We have a lot of roles and responsibilities for the court with a small staff, but we try to get the job done. Primarily what Pretrial Services does has 2 primary functions for the court.
Okay, what are they?
They are investigations for the court and supervision. And primarily what that means is that for folks who are arrested in felony cases on warrants and probable cause cases, we have staff that are in the jail who go in and interview and provide a screening and investigation report for the court for those preliminary appearances. And that provides a lot of background for the judge as well as the prosecutor and the public defender in making a release decision, whether that's on a new probable cause or a warrant. And that information is used for setting bail, recommending release, as well as setting those conditions of release once they're in the community, whether they're bonded out or on personal recognizances. So that's one portion of it. The other half of that is then when those folks are released from custody, there's a significant number of those individuals who are then placed on community supervision through Pretrial Services, and then the other half of our staff at the courthouse. Then we oversee all of those conditions of release, helping to ensure that they follow those conditions as well as get back to court, and hoping to reduce the failure to appear in court by being a reminder system for those defendants who are out.
So 5 people, court system of judges and the staff. And how many people do you see on a daily basis, hourly basis, weekly basis? And what's the volume of rate? The rate of volume?
We actually have a high volume. We've in last year we kind of set a record number. We interviewed at the jail over 2,200 people for those preliminary appearances, and we actually supervised approximately 1,100 people on pretrial services supervision who were out of jail, waiting to come back for future and pending court hearings.
Right, a lot of people.
A lot of people.
For a lot of small staff there. Okay, and so for the Triage Center here, is there a large role, small role? What role do you have here in terms of the Triage Center and helping out with the the LEAD program and what have you?
What we do, we don't have a direct connection to the LEAD because the LEAD is more the pre-arrest. Pre-trial becomes involved once a defendant is arrested.
Okay.
However, we are the people who see those folks first. We see them before they even have, a bail or preliminary appearance, and so at that time we have the opportunity to see who they are and be informing the public defender, the prosecutor, the court, of saying, hey, this person has a mental health issue, letting them know ahead of time, maybe triage or something might be more readily apparent and need, even before they become the preliminary appearance. Or look at a reentry program as opposed to, a plan that gets them out of custody as soon as possible, but has resources set up. We're there kind of at the front end of the system to identify folks who not only have triage, but may have a mental health court opportunity, a drug court opportunity, or veterans court, because we're trying to collect all that information about them personally, and perhaps instead of looking at the regular path of prosecution, maybe divert them away from that, or at least identify them early on, so when they're at arraignment or at those first few hearings, saying, hey, there may be an opportunity here, because we're seeing them so often, and we're seeing them on a weekly basis many times. Having that connection with them and that contact to keep them connected with the court, so we don't lose them. And then that's when you get those failure to appear rates.
Fantastic. So you've been doing this 26 years almost?
Almost 26 years.
And what makes you continue something like that? What's your passion about the pretrial services?
The one thing that I really like about this job is 2 things. It's very dynamic. No matter what, in all of these years, every day is not the same. There's always a lot going on. The other thing is that over the many, many years I've done this, you get to know these folks. And,
Real human beings.
You get to really know who they are. You know their stories. And the one thing is, when you see them succeed, and when you see all these therapeutic courts and you hear their stories, it's really actually pretty rewarding to see them do so well, instead of sitting there going, oh, I see you back in jail again.
Just another one, huh?
You see folks who have been very successful in diversion. You see them successful in mental health or drug court, and it's really rewarding to recognize that they can do it. It is possible.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming today and giving us some insight on pretrial services and the years of experience you've given. And Mary Ann, your whole team, thank you so much for what you do.
Well, thank you.
You
Thank
bet.
you so much.
All right. Today I have with me Patrick O'Connor. He is the Director of Public Defense for Thurston County. And I've asked him to come and talk a little bit with me and you as far as the Triage Center, in particular the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program. And with that in mind, he plays, in his office, plays a critical role in terms of the public defense when we do bring someone to the Triage Center. And so I'd like to welcome you today here, Patrick. And how
Thank
are
you,
you?
Commissioner. Good
Yeah,
to
how
be
are you
here.
doing? Yep. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the role as a public defense here in the Triage Center when we talk about diversion.
Sure. Well, a little bit about myself. I'm a career public defender here in Thurston County. I've spent over a decade defending our community's indigent clients that are appointed to our department, whether it be in a criminal case or we actually represent people in non-criminal cases as well. Our office has a role in this facility, in the triage facility, in several different aspects. Okay. In addition to representing people accused of crimes, we also represent other individuals in our community, specifically for this facility, those that are facing an involuntary treatment commitment through the Involuntary Treatment Act. Those are individuals in our community that are vulnerable, that suffer from a mental illness, that come here every day to see a judge and determine whether or not they should be committed to Western State Hospital due to an illness. Okay. In addition to that, we also have a collaborative project with the Prosecuting Attorney's Office. That project is a diversion, so those individuals who are arrested in our community that we're able to identify early on with an acute mental illness, we're able to collaborate with the prosecuting attorney early on to determine whether or not that case should go forward in a criminal setting or be referred to this facility to more of a civil commitment. So we're here a lot.
Wow, that's an incredibly large role and undertaking here. And about how many people do you have involved from your staff or other public defenders?
We have, I think, about 35 staff, a mix of attorneys, about 20 lawyers, and staff that are highly skilled, dedicated to public service and to specifically public defense. We are excited to be a part of this community and play a role. We often play an invisible role, so to speak, in community safety. But these projects that we've started discussing here with diversions, I've been working here, like I said, 10 years, and I can't be more proud of what we've been able to accomplish in the last 2 years with what we're doing here at the Triage for this community.
We have come a long ways, haven't we? Yeah, sure have.
We have.
And again, as I mentioned, you and your office play a critical role. Just kind of walk us through what a public defense attorney does here, and when a person is brought here by either law enforcement or behavioral. Just kind of give us a snapshot in time what it consists of.
Sure. Well, if they're being brought here for a potential involuntary commitment, we have an attorney that's dedicated, two attorneys actually, that are dedicated to representing those folks. They get they share information. They see the clients this morning or any other morning. They'll have a hearing that afternoon. They get to spend as much time as they can with the client and prepare for a hearing. They are fierce advocates for their clients, protecting their constitutional rights, but also there's a very humanitarian role that we play as well, trying to do the right thing for the individual, their family, and our community.
You bet. And so when that happens and kind of things go along as far as the protocols, do you go before the larger court or do you go before the court commissioner that's assigned to here? Or how does that work where you see a judge or a court commissioner, I guess?
Sure. So for those involuntary treatment hearings, they would go before a commissioner here. If the case is in that other category that I referred to earlier, that a decision is made by the prosecuting attorney not to refer the case to this facility, but to continue on with the criminal charges, then they would appear with a different lawyer from my department to begin the criminal proceedings.
One additional thing that is mentioned is from the prosecuting attorney side is the first look. Do you have a role in that, and if so, how does that figure in?
Yeah, we certainly do. And again, it's another exciting. These are all efforts to reform criminal justice here in our community. Absolutely. And this was a concept that Mr. Thunheim and I had discussed last year, and we're still evolving. But the concept is, the three leading causes for people in our community that intersect with the criminal justice system isn't unique to us, but it remains poverty, chemical dependency, and mental illness. And so First Look is a concept for those individuals that are either new to the criminal justice system, to offer them an opportunity to divert out of the criminal justice system without a conviction so they can get employed, contribute to our community for a mistake that they may have made. Or, as Mr. Graham pointed out earlier, some of those individuals that we've seen repeatedly in our criminal justice system, and trying to make an effort to connect them with the services they need to live a better life, to be frank. And largely, these types of programs will only make our community safer. And we're committed, the prosecuting attorney is committed. This is going to be an exciting year.
Yep. Tell me a little bit about any kind of particular case that you've seen go to success, just without using any of the privacy, just kind of walk us through what success looks like. Have you seen any of that? Mm-hmm.
Sure, yeah, we have. I ran into a client very recently at Safeway who had been diverted.
Mm-hmm.
He was very young, made a mistake like we all do.
We all have, yeah, sure.
And he was able to be afforded the opportunity to overcome that mistake. And he was able to overcome it without a felony conviction. He's employed, stable, he's connected with his parents, and he's living a good life, and he's contributing. So that's one thing that's great about Thurston County, as you know. We are constantly running into our clients, and as Kelly mentioned earlier, there's nothing more satisfying for any of us in the criminal justice system to have those success stories, and we have a lot of them, and we hope to have more. You will.
So Patrick, you mentioned you have approximately 35 attorneys here to associate with the Triage Center, and obviously the staff, administrative staff that comes with that. Give me a little idea, or give the public a little idea of some of the internal changes you've had to make here since you've been in charge of as a Director of Public Defense for Thurston County.
Sure. Well, we have 35 staff. We have 20 attorneys.
There you go. I'm sorry. There you go. Set me straight.
Yeah. Well, you have
Good.
a lot of numbers, I'm sure, thrown at you. But this year, in 2018, we were very fortunate to get some support from the board, and you. I thank you for that. We added 3 felony attorneys, and those felony attorneys, as Mr. Graham pointed out, are really what we're targeting with First Look and these other criminal justice reform initiatives. So the additional staff in our office to meet the demand of, the way our office works is the court appoints us to represent individuals.
Okay.
We represent the vast majority of individuals accused of crimes in Thurston County because they fall below the federal poverty line.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there's that connection between income and the criminal justice system. And so that's been a huge addition. We've already started looking at our first quarter numbers, and we've really seen the impacts. It's not just the impacts in the amount of cases we can take, it's also an impact in results that I firmly believe in justice delayed is justice denied. And so when we are able to recruit and retain highly dedicated public defenders that are committed to our mission and our values, that only helps our community and helps our clients. And we've also increased a couple other areas in our department. We've such as we have hired our first internal criminal investigator.
Oh, great.
Yes. So all our clients are entitled.
Huge step.
Yeah, it's a huge step. All the clients that we represent are entitled to independent investigation, and so we've had that support. I thank you and the other commissioners for that. So far, it's been wildly successful. We have also added 1 support staff to support those 3 attorneys, and beginning of next month, we will add an accounting assistant to help with our accounting department.
Which is absolutely critical also to keep the numbers
Very critical,
straight, right?
Very critical, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I want to take a moment here to thank you for your leadership, looking internally and externally to taking care of those who are involved in coming here to the triage and for Thurston County at large.
You bet. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Today I have with me here Mark Freeman. He is the CEO for Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization, and he plays such a critical role in making sure that the Triage Center here in Thurston County and potentially here in Mason County is fully operational with the staff that we have involved, and working with the other partners such as law enforcement and particularly the prosecuting attorney, the public defense, and we're occasionally the pretrial services. So Mark, welcome here today.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Tell us a little bit about you and your role here as the CEO of Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization.
Happy to. Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization is primary purpose is to work with individuals with behavioral health disorders at all levels and continuum of the care. Most of our focus and population are those on Medicaid, but we handle crisis for anybody. When we talk about the continuum of care, that includes involuntary treatment, it includes outpatient, it includes crisis services, medication, so the full gamut. We serve in a given year several thousand individuals throughout the whole year. So it's covers both Thurston and Mason County.
How long have you been in this kind of business?
I've been here in Thurston County specifically for just about 21 years. Prior to that, I did similar work down in Oregon. Before that, I was a clinical director at an outpatient agency.
So you've seen a lot of changes?
I've seen a lot of changes, and actually this county I find quite remarkable. I have peers throughout the state doing similar work for their counties, and I got to say, I think it's quite positive and unique. The relationship of having the prosecuting attorney's office, defense counsel, the BHO, courts, everybody involved, and also law enforcement, the patrol officer on the street. How positive the experience has been of working together to recognize that when somebody has an acute crisis, behavioral health driven, and they commit a crime due to their illness. Now, is the best outcome for that for them to take up a bed in a jail, or can we treat them to reduce the incidence? So we've all been working very positively together to, one, identifying, to be clear, we're not going to create a system that poses any additional risk to the community.
That's exactly right.
But we want to be able to treat people and reduce, the outcome is reduce the chance of going to jail or even having to encounter law enforcement.
Okay.
So we have been successful with that.
Very much so. So a scenario, if I may, and I'll speed it up just a little bit in the sense that the behavioralist or the law enforcement brings a person here to the Triage Center. You mentioned treatment. Talk to us about a person who walks through the door and what kind of actions take place in terms of treatment and care and the whole process.
Certainly. So first place, most likely the individual is not walking through the door.
Okay.
They're being brought in through the sally port by the police or by an ambulance, even on a gurney. They're coming into this facility. Odds are they're coming in an involuntary detention, and most likely because in this particular facility there's a great likelihood that they've encountered law enforcement due to their actions, or have possibility of an arrest occurring. They come in. First thing we do is medical clearance to make sure physically and everything else that they're safe and people around them are safe.
Yep.
And then we spend time working with them, get their history, look and one to make sure and understand what medications they're on, and essentially it's doing a clinical assessment where we move into treatment. And this facility has both medical and clinical staff, including a psychiatrist or an ARMP who would be involved in the assessment and doing a medication assessment as well. So there's a lot of our population that ends up when they become acute is because they've gone off their medication. We can get them back on, get them stabilized. We have a better chance also then of continuing treatment when they move out of this facility back into the community, which is absolutely critical. They don't come in here and resolve their issues by just moving out. We have to provide that cushion, that warm handoff for the reentry process for them to move back into the community. And that includes also even individuals coming out of the jail. If maybe we did not treat them here, but coming out of the jail, if they have a major behavioral health issue, we want to follow them. We want to engage them. We want to make the system user-friendly for them so they engage in treatment, and we help further their stability in the community.
Sure. A lot of partners in terms of making this successful, and you mentioned a few of them, but just in a short
I don't do anything short.
Yeah, I know. Just in a little bit, tell us how on a day-to-day basis, how you or a staff member has to work with some of the partners.
Well, one of the interesting things that the BHO has evolved into is also we are now a licensed mental health agency.
Right.
And we have a couple of programs that are running, kind of doing essential, very specialized areas of care. And these staff number of them are peer counselors. Individuals have prior history themselves and understand how to engage and be with a client. They can be working with another outpatient agency where the individual goes for treatment. They can be working with, if it's a child, there are a number of child serving agencies. They work with Providence, St. Peter Hospital, or any other hospital
There you go.
involved.
That's what I was talking about. Other partners like that.
And then even some of them, we have staff down at the new Community Care Center. So we work hard to reduce homelessness. We work with landlords, housing providers, all the outpatient agencies, as I mentioned. And we are now working, really focusing on how do we integrate behavioral health care with primary care. So working with physicians, working with who else is taking care of the medical side of this individual's need, private or otherwise. But other critical players, one major one is the jail. I've been here and I've seen a couple different jail managers and understand different relationships with them. Right now, we're in an incredible functional kind of relationship between us and the jail in terms of what occurs with, they identify upwards of 40, even sometimes 60% of their population are dealing with mental health and substance use issues. So how we can work with them and then transition people out to agencies in the community, even other kinds of agencies that we're involved with. We have a great relationship with Education School District 113.
Yep, there's another partner.
113, yeah.
Yeah, 113.
112. That works directly in the schools with our children and trying to do work up front. Prevention work is critical so we don't even end up into this kind of situation. It's unfortunately that the Medicaid funding we receive does not focus on prevention in terms of when there's not an identified patient. That is critical, and hopefully in the future that is something that can be developed.
Okay.
But that's just a list. If you want agencies' names, them.
So we talked about process in the beginning, and then partners and some of the programs and stuff. Let's talk about a specialty there. I'm going to say the acronym, and you can go ahead and elaborate on it. The DMHPs and how that works, and just kind of tell the viewing audience what a DMHP is in terms of what the acronym stands for and how what their role is.
DMHPs, designated mental health professionals, are actually now called DCRs.
Update.
Yeah, so they're essentially focusing now on crisis response because it's not just mental disorders that they're responding to. They're also now responding to if a person is gravely disabled, dangerous self or other due to substance abuse. So that's being included now in their book of business, if you will. So their job is to go out when there's a referral. It could be at the hospital and emergency department, could be from police, could be from a community member, it could be from the community care center. An individual is so acute in their presentation that they're dangerous to themselves and staying healthy. That's the kind of individual we want to treat here so we can stabilize them. The DMHP, or now DCR, is the one that does that initial evaluation to determine by law, can this person be detained and move into involuntary treatment.
Great. And how many, and just kind of the history of that's been?
Sure. So right now we're running between Thurston and Mason County approximately 15 staff, 15 FTEs, to do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We are constantly on. And they cover the whole physical region and have to be able to respond and do an evaluation within a certain period of time. These staff are wonderful. They're well trained. They got great supervision by our staff. And they're the ones who are on the leading edge of being out there to first engage somebody. We've been working hard with law enforcement and our own mobile outreach teams to, when they engage somebody, they identify is how do we coordinate with them and how do we work with them, where the next step is to move towards involuntary care. So.
All righty. Any particular successes that have occurred here recently that you'd like to talk about in terms of the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization?
Sure. Well, some of the work we're doing now, well, there are several new projects that have started up. One It's called, pardon the names, we don't have control of some of that, but it's True Blood.
True Blood.
Where we have a grant now for where we have additional clinical staff in the jail doing assessments, and then peer counselors working with individuals who have major behavioral health issues, move them out to connect with housing, to connect with treatment, and to stabilize them. And we're reducing, even when we look at this facility, since this building has been up in the past year and a half, we've served about 350 individuals. Those are individuals that would have otherwise gone to jail. So just in terms of an overall success, these are all people who were either reducing the length of stay or not even going at all into the criminal justice system, and where then we move them into treatment. So these services we have, we're working on another one right now where we have a grant from Department of Commerce for construction of building a similar facility like this in Mason County.
Right.
That'll be between 12 and 16 beds.
Wow.
And we hope to even expand that further with another possibility of additional capital funding and see what else we can do.
So you said 12 to 16 beds in Mason County, and
Yes.
how many beds here at this particular?
This facility only has 10
10,
beds.
okay.
It's unfortunate we were sort of constrained by funding and just the size of this building. The building itself is being provided by Thurston County. Some of the other facilities we own, we do own as a BHO, and that includes then the evaluation treatment facility that has 15 involuntary beds and 10 stabilization beds. That's the extent for inpatient. Other than that, then we go out to hospital settings
Wow.
for inpatient treatment.
Wow. There's a lot going on in Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization, whether it be with the law and justice system or the community as a whole, or just special programs that you and your staff run. And I cannot thank you enough for what you do
Happy to.
in terms of bringing care and love to the community in terms with the mental health
Yes.
issues that are going on. It's a crisis a lot of times, and you're on the front line of keeping people the best you can. So thank you so much for what you do.
Happy to.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Mark. I want to take a very special moment to thank the guests that have come today to speak about the Triage Center, and particularly the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization here in Thurston County and Mason County. I'm Commissioner Bud Blake. Thank you for watching Thurston County Connections.